I never thought my life would take such a strange turn the moment I decided to step into that coffee shop on a rainy Thursday evening. The kind of rain that wasn't heavy enough to drench you completely, but insistent enough to soak through your shoes and make you curse the weather gods for not warning you earlier. I had been walking home from the gym, earbuds in, hoodie up, trying to ignore the dampness creeping down the back of my neck, when I spotted a dimly lit cafe on the corner of Jefferson and 8th. The place looked cozy, almost old-fashioned compared to the sleek, modern coffee chains that had invaded the city. Wooden frames, warm lights, and windows fogged from the inside, it felt like it belonged in another time. I pushed the door open, and a bell above chimed softly. The smell of roasted beans and vanilla hit me instantly, comforting in a way that made me forget about the rain. There weren't many people inside. A couple of students hunched over laptops in the back, an old man with a newspaper by the window, and behind the counter her. At first, I thought maybe it was just the lighting. The way the amber bulbs above the counter lit her hair like strands of fire, or the soft glow that seemed to cling to her smile when she greeted me. But no, it wasn't the light. She was simply striking. Her hair was dark, long, and pulled into a loose ponytail, with strands escaping around her face. Her eyes caught mine, hazel with flecks of green, and there was something about them curious, playful, but sharp. She wasn't the kind of girl who just blended into the background, she was the type you noticed and couldn't quite forget. "First time here?" she asked, her voice carrying that perfect balance between casual and interested. "Yeah," I said, brushing the water off my sleeves. "Got caught in the rain. This place looked like a good escape." "Well, you found the right spot," she said, leaning slightly on the counter. "We serve the best coffee in the neighborhood. At least, that's what I tell people." Her grin was teasing, but there was confidence behind it. "What do you recommend?" I asked, scanning the chalkboard menu. Half the names sounded like they required a translator. "Depends. You want something strong enough to keep you awake all night, or something that feels like a warm hug?" Her words had a hint of double meaning, though maybe I was just imagining it. Either way, it made me smirk. "Let's go with the warm hug," I said. "Perfect. One caramel latte coming up." As she prepared the drink, I found myself studying her movements. Efficient but graceful, like she'd done this 1,000 times. There was something magnetic about her presence, not just her looks, but the way she seemed fully alive in that moment. When she handed me the cup, her fingers brushed against mine, light but deliberate enough to notice. I caught her eyes again, and for a moment, the noise of the cafe faded. It was just me, her, and the unspoken tension lingering in the air. I took a sip. "Okay, you weren't lying. That's dangerously good." She smirked. "Told you. You'll be back." I chuckled. "Is that a challenge?" "Maybe." There it was again, that teasing spark. I sat by the window, pretending to check my phone but unable to stop glancing at her. She noticed, of course. Every time our eyes met, she didn't look away immediately. She held the gaze for a second longer than most people would. Enough to make it clear it wasn't an accident. By the time I finished my drink, the rain had eased. I stood, reluctant to leave, but not wanting to overstay my welcome. As I approached the counter to return the cup, she leaned closer. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan," I said. "Nice to meet you, Ethan." "I'm Claire." Claire. It fit her, simple, classic, but unforgettable. "Well, Claire, Thanks for saving me from the rain. She tilted her head, her ponytail slipping over her shoulder. Like I said, you'll be back. And she was right. The return. The next evening, I found myself walking past the cafe again. This time, it wasn't raining. I told myself I was just curious, maybe I wanted another latte, maybe I liked the cozy vibe. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was hoping to see her again. And she was there. She noticed me the moment I walked in, her lips curving into that same teasing smile. Back already? I must be good at my job. Or maybe I'm just easily addicted, I said, smirking. She laughed, and I swear it was one of those laughs that hit you in the chest, genuine, unguarded, the kind you wanted to hear again. This time, I sat at the counter instead of hiding by the window. She leaned on her elbows, resting her chin in her hand, studying me with that same curious glint. So, Ethan, what do you do? Besides wandering into random cafes and letting strangers decide your coffee order? I'm a graphic designer, I said. Mostly freelance. Which means I spend a lot of time arguing with clients who think they know what they want until they don't. She chuckled. Sounds familiar. People do the same thing with coffee. They'll order something complicated, then complain it's too bitter or too sweet. Like, what did you expect? The conversation flowed easily, like we'd known each other longer than a day. We talked about music, movies, random childhood memories. I learned she was studying literature at the university nearby, working at the cafe to cover expenses. She loved old books, hated instant coffee, and had a sarcastic sense of humor that kept me on my toes. But there was also a subtle edge to her. Something she wasn't saying outright, something I could feel in the way she'd sometimes pause mid-sentence, her eyes flickering with a thought she chose not to share. The more she talked, the more intrigued I became. At one point, a customer interrupted to order, and I watched her switch into barista mode. Polite, professional, but not nearly as warm as when she spoke to me. That difference made me feel special, in a way I wasn't used to. When her shift ended, I was still there, nursing my second cup. She grabbed her jacket, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked past me toward the door. For a second, I thought she'd just leave with a casual goodbye. But then she stopped, turned, and leaned down close enough that I caught the faint scent of vanilla and coffee beans. You walk this way home, right? She asked softly. I blinked. Yeah. Usually. Then let's go. No hesitation. Just that same teasing confidence. And so we stepped out into the night together. The walk. The streets glistened under the streetlights, rain still lingering in puddles. Claire walked with her hands in her pockets, head tilted slightly toward me, her ponytail swaying behind her. So, Ethan, she said, her voice playful, are you always this mysterious? Or do you usually tell girls your whole life story within 2 days? I smirked. Guess you bring it out of me. She laughed, bumping her shoulder lightly against mine. Smooth. We walked for blocks, talking about everything and nothing. There was a comfort in the way she carried herself, confident but not arrogant, playful but not shallow. Every so often, our hands brushed, and each time it sent a spark up my arm. By the time we reached my street, I realized I didn't want the night to end. She stopped at the corner, looking up at me with that mischievous smile. Well, this is where I head off. I hesitated, then said, Claire, do you maybe want to hang out sometime? Outside of the cafe, I mean. Her eyes lingered on mine, and for a moment I thought she might laugh it off. But then her lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. Maybe, she said. But only if you promise not to fall in love with me too fast. I raised a brow. That a warning? Maybe. And with that, she turned and walked away, her laughter echoing in the night. I stood there, heart racing, realizing I had just stepped into something I couldn't quite define. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be just another casual story. The next few days were a blur. Work piled up on my laptop, deadlines loomed, but my mind kept drifting back to Claire. I found myself opening the cafe door more often than I cared to admit, each time telling myself it was just for the coffee. But I knew better. And so did she. Every time I walked in, she looked up with that same smile, as if she had been waiting for me. The way her eyes lit up when she saw me, that wasn't the kind of reaction you gave every customer. One evening, I came in later than usual. The cafe was quieter, most tables empty, and Claire was wiping down the counter with slow, absent-minded movements. When she saw me, her lips curved into a grin. "Ethan. I was starting to think you'd forgotten me." "Not a chance," I said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. She set the cloth aside and leaned on her elbows. "So, what's the excuse tonight? Need another warm hug?" "Actually," I said, lowering my voice, "I was hoping for something stronger." Her brows arched, amused. "Oh? Feeling bold? You could say that." She smirked and poured me a black coffee, no sugar, no cream. "Let's see if you can handle this." I took a sip. Bitter. Strong. Nothing like the caramel latte. But I forced a smile. "Not bad." Her laughter rang out, light and teasing. "You're a terrible liar. But I'll give you credit for trying." The banter was easy, natural. But beneath it, there was something else. A current I couldn't ignore. The way she leaned just a little too close when she handed me the cup, the way her eyes lingered on mine a moment too long. We talked for hours that night, long after the other customers had left. She told me about her classes, the professors she couldn't stand, the books she loved. She quoted lines from poems, her voice soft and rhythmic, and I found myself hanging on every word. "You really love this stuff, huh?" I asked when she finished reciting a passage from some 19th century poet I'd never heard of. Her eyes softened. "Yeah. Words, they can cut deeper than anything else. Or heal, if you know how to use them." There was something in her tone wistful, almost sad. For a moment, her guard slipped, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath the confidence. But then she smiled again, quick and playful, as if she hadn't revealed anything at all. "Anyway. Enough about me. What about you, Mr. Designer? Show me something you've made." I hesitated, then pulled out my phone and scrolled through a few projects, logos, posters, even a personal art piece I hadn't shown anyone. She studied them carefully, her brows furrowing in concentration. "These are good," she said finally. "You have an eye for detail. But this one," she pointed at the personal piece, a moody digital painting I'd done late one night, "this feels different. This one says something." Her insight caught me off guard. Most people would have just said, "Cool." But she noticed the part I'd poured myself into. "You're not like most people, are you?" I said quietly. She tilted her head, a smile tugging at her lips. "Would you be disappointed if I said I was?" Not even a little. The cafe closed around midnight, but neither of us moved. It wasn't until the owner poked his head out of the back room that Claire sighed and grabbed her bag. As we stepped outside, the night was cool, the air crisp with the smell of wet pavement. She walked beside me, her steps light, her hands stuffed in her jacket pockets. "Ethan," she said suddenly, "why do you keep coming back?" The question caught me off guard. "For the coffee," I teased. She gave me a look sharp, amused, daring me to be honest. I exhaled. "Because of you." For a moment, her expression softened. Then she smirked. "Careful. I warned you about falling too fast. Maybe I like living dangerously." Her laughter echoed through the quiet street. A different side. Over the next week, we slipped into a rhythm. Some nights, I'd drop by the cafe just to see her. Other times, we'd walk home together, talking about everything from our childhood dreams to ridiculous hypothetical scenarios. The chemistry between us wasn't subtle anymore. It was there in the way her hand would brush mine when we walked side by side. In the way she leaned closer when she laughed. In the way her eyes lingered, daring, testing me. One Friday night, the cafe was packed louder than usual. Claire moved quickly behind the counter, taking orders, calling out drinks. I sat at the counter, watching her. She looked different when she worked under pressure, focused, sharp, her hair falling loose around her face. At one point, she glanced up, met my eyes, and smirked. Just a small moment, but it sent a rush through me. When the rush finally died down and the cafe emptied, she leaned on the counter, breathing hard. That was insane. "You make it look easy," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Flattery. Dangerous weapon, Ethan. Only if it's not true." Her lips curved, but before she could reply, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted. Her jaw tightened, her eyes darkened, and she quickly shoved the phone back into her pocket. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she said too quickly. But her tone betrayed her. For the rest of the night, she was quieter, distracted. When I walked her home, she forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. At her corner, she stopped and said, "Good night, Ethan." "Claire," I started, but she cut me off with a quick kiss on the cheek. It was light, fleeting, but it sent my pulse racing. Before I could say anything, she turned and walked away. The weekend. The next day, she didn't text. Not that I expected her to. We hadn't exactly exchanged numbers, though I realized I wanted to. But when I stopped by the cafe, she wasn't there. Another barista told me she had taken the day off. I tried not to overthink it, but I couldn't shake the image of her face when she saw that message. The sudden shift in her mood. The way she had pulled back. Sunday afternoon, I decided to take a walk, hoping to clear my head. But fate had other plans. I spotted her across the street, sitting alone on a park bench, a notebook open on her lap. She was scribbling furiously, her brow furrowed, her lips pressed together. For a moment, I debated leaving her alone. She looked private, like she was in her own world. But then she looked up, saw me, and her eyes widened. "Ethan," she said as I approached, her voice softer than usual. "Hey," I said. "Didn't mean to interrupt." She closed the notebook quickly, almost defensively. "You're fine." "Just writing." "Poetry?" I asked. Something like that, she said with a half smile. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the park around us, children laughing, dogs barking, leaves rustling in the wind. Finally, she sighed. I'm not used to this. To what? To someone noticing when I pull away. Most people don't care enough to ask. I studied her, the guarded look in her eyes. Claire, you don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, she looked at me without the teasing smile, without the shield of sarcasm. Just raw, unguarded honesty. That scares me more than anything, she whispered. And before I could respond, she reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly, but the grip was firm. It wasn't just a gesture of affection, it was something deeper. A silent plea not to let go. We sat like that for a long time, no words needed. Just the quiet acknowledgement that whatever this was between us, it was real. And it was only the beginning. The park bench moment lingered with me for days. The way Claire held my hand that afternoon was different from anything before, less teasing, less playful. It was raw, unguarded, almost desperate. And it made me realize something. Behind her sharp wit and confident smile, she was hiding parts of herself she didn't easily let anyone see. But I wanted to see them. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe it was dangerous. But from the moment I met her, danger had never felt so tempting. The invitation. A few nights later, I walked into the cafe expecting the usual banter. But this time, Claire wasn't behind the counter. My chest tightened, a dull disappointment settling in. I ordered a drink anyway and sat by the window, pretending to scroll through my phone while I watched the door. 10 minutes later, she walked in. Not in her apron, not with her hair tied back, but in a simple black jacket and jeans. Her hair was loose, tumbling over her shoulders, and she looked different. Less like Claire the barista and more like the version of herself she kept hidden. When her eyes found me, she smiled, not the teasing smirk I was used to, but something softer. Waiting for me, she asked as she slid into the seat across from me. Maybe, I said. She studied me for a moment, then leaned back, her arms crossed loosely. I have a proposition. I raised a brow. Sounds dangerous already. It is, she said with a faint grin. My roommate's out of town for the weekend. I don't feel like sitting alone. So, come over. Her tone was casual, but the weight behind her words wasn't. This wasn't just an invitation to hang out. This was a line, one we hadn't crossed yet. Are you sure? I asked, my voice lower than I intended. Her eyes glinted with something unreadable. Ethan, if I weren't sure, I wouldn't ask. And just like that, the decision was made. Her apartment. Claire's apartment was a small, second-floor walk up a few blocks from the cafe. Cozy but cluttered, books stacked everywhere on shelves, on the floor, even on the windowsill. A candle burned on the coffee table, filling the room with a faint vanilla scent. Excuse the mess, she said, kicking aside a stack of papers. I live in organized chaos. I smiled. Feels very, you. She tossed her jacket on the couch and gestured for me to sit. Then she disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses of wine. To bad decisions, she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. To dangerous propositions. We drank, the silence between us charged. She sat closer than necessary, her knee brushing against mine. The wine loosened her edges, she laughed more freely, her words flowing without the usual filter. At one point, she leaned forward, studying me with an intensity that made my pulse race. "You know what I like about you, Ethan?" she asked. "What's that?" "You don't run." I frowned. "Run from what?" Her eyes softened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she set her glass down and reached out, her fingers tracing the back of my hand. Slow. Deliberate. The air shifted. Her touch was light, but it sent a current through me. My breath caught, and when our eyes met, there was no smirk, no sarcasm. Just heat. I leaned in, and this time, she didn't pull away. Our lips met in a kiss that was hesitant at first, testing, searching. But it deepened quickly, the tension of weeks crashing into that single moment. Her hand slid up my neck, pulling me closer, and I felt the urgency in her movements, the way she clung like she'd been holding herself back for too long. When we finally broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. "See," she whispered, her lips brushing mine. "Dangerous." The night. We spent hours on that couch kissing, laughing, talking in the low glow of candlelight. It wasn't about rushing into anything. It was about the electricity of being close, the thrill of finally crossing that invisible line. Her kisses were intoxicating. Sometimes soft, lingering, like she was memorizing the taste of me. Other times fierce, hungry, like she was afraid I might vanish if she let go. At one point, she pulled back, her eyes searching mine. "You're not like them," she whispered. "Them?" She shook her head quickly, as if she'd said too much. "Forget it." But I couldn't forget. The way she said it with a trace of bitterness, maybe even pain, lodged itself in my mind. Still, I didn't push. Instead, I pulled her closer, and she melted against me, her guard slipping further with every passing moment. By the time the candle burned low, she was curled against my chest, her breathing slow and steady. I thought she'd fallen asleep, but then she murmured, barely audible, "Don't leave." My chest tightened. "I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. The morning after. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the room in gold. I woke to the scent of coffee, real coffee, not the cafe version, and Claire standing in the kitchen, hair messy, wearing an oversized shirt that probably belonged to her roommate. She glanced over, saw me watching, and smirked. "Don't get used to this. I don't play housewife." I grinned. "Noted." We ate breakfast together, the mood light but comfortable. Still, I couldn't ignore the way she avoided certain questions, how she deflected whenever the conversation veered toward her past. Finally, as I was leaving, I turned at the door. "Claire." "Yeah." Last night, it wasn't just I hesitated, searching for the right words. It meant something to me. For a moment, her mask slipped. I saw it in her eyes, the flicker of fear, the silent battle inside her. Then she smiled, soft and almost sad. "Careful, Ethan. You're making it harder for me to keep my warnings." And with that, she kissed me quickly and shut the door. The shift. The next week felt different. We weren't just flirting anymore. We were something more, even if we didn't define it. She'd text me late at night, little things like "can't sleep," "thinking too much," or "read a poem today that reminded me of you." I started craving those messages, the way they pulled me deeper into her world. But at the same time, the cracks were showing. One night at the cafe, she seemed distracted again, her phone buzzing non-stop. When I asked, she brushed it off, but I caught the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the counter too tightly. Later, as we walked home, she suddenly stopped, her eyes darting down the street. "Claire?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "Nothing. Just thought I saw someone I knew." But her voice trembled, and I knew it wasn't nothing. When we reached her building, she grabbed my hand before I could leave. "Ethan, promise me something. Anything. No matter what happens, don't give up on me." Her words hit me like a punch. "I won't," I said without hesitation. She searched my face, as if testing the truth in my words. Then she kissed me, fierce and urgent, like it was both a promise and a plea. And in that moment, I realized, whatever secret she was hiding, whatever shadow lingered over her, it was coming closer. And I was already in too deep to walk away. The promise I made to Claire that night haunted me more than I expected. "Don't give up on me." Those words played in my mind on repeat, a mixture of plea and warning. I didn't know what she was hiding, but I knew one thing for sure: whatever it was, it had the power to hurt her. And probably me, too. But I didn't care. I was already too far in. The weekend outing. Saturday evening, Claire surprised me with a text. "Meet me at the bookstore on 10th 7 p.m. Don't be late." When I arrived, she was waiting outside, bundled in a dark coat, her hair loose and catching the light of the street lamps. She looked different again, not like the playful barista or the guarded girl on the park bench. Tonight, she looked determined. "You're here," she said, her lips curving. "Of course. Where are we going?" "You'll see." The bookstore turned out to be her idea of a perfect date. She dragged me through the aisles, pulling random books off shelves, reading snippets in dramatic voices that made strangers glance our way. We laughed until my stomach hurt. At one point, she handed me a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. "This one's dangerous," she said. "Dangerous?" I smirked. "It's just a book." "It's never just a book." She leaned closer, her voice low. "People ruin themselves chasing dreams that were never real." There was weight in her tone, as if she were speaking about more than Fitzgerald. But before I could ask, she kissed me quickly in the middle of the aisle, silencing my questions. The kiss that changed things. Later, we ended up at a quiet bar. Music hummed low in the background, and she sat beside me in a booth, her hand resting lightly on my knee. "You're staring," she teased after a while, sipping her drink. "Can you blame me?" I said. Her lips curved, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. A shadow. When I leaned in to kiss her, she responded with a fierceness that startled me. It wasn't playful. It wasn't gentle. It was hungry, desperate, as if she needed me to drown out something clawing at her from inside. Her hand gripped the back of my neck, pulling me closer, her breath quick against my lips. The bar, the music, the people around us, it all vanished. When we finally pulled apart, her cheeks flushed, she whispered, "You make me forget." "Forget what?" I asked softly. Her smile was faint, brittle. "Exactly." And just like that, she changed the subject. The stranger. On our way back, we cut through a quieter street. The night was cool, and Claire's arm was linked through mine. I was about to make a joke when she suddenly froze. Her entire body tensed. "Claire." I followed her gaze and saw him. A man standing across the street, half in shadow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. Claire's grip on my arm tightened painfully. The man's eyes flicked between us before he turned and walked away, disappearing into the alley. Who was that? I asked, my chest tightening. No one, she said too quickly, pulling me along. Forget it. Claire. Please, Ethan. Her voice broke. Just drop it. I wanted to push, but the fear in her eyes stopped me. It wasn't the kind of fear you could argue with. So I dropped it. For now. The night at her place. That night at her apartment, the tension between us was unbearable. She paced the room, restless, while I sat on the couch, watching her. Claire, I said finally, who was he? She stopped, her back to me. Her shoulders rose and fell as she took a shaky breath. It doesn't matter. It does to me. She turned, and for the first time, I saw real fear crack through her confidence. Ethan, there are things about me you don't understand. Things I can't drag you into. I stood and crossed the room, gently taking her hands. Too late. I'm already in. Her eyes glistened, torn between wanting to push me away and needing me close. And in that moment, she chose the latter. She kissed me, fierce and trembling, her hands gripping me like I was the only solid thing in her world. The kiss deepened, turned urgent, until we stumbled back onto the couch. It wasn't just passion, it was need. The need to hold on, to forget, to silence the ghosts chasing her. Her breath came fast against my neck, her body pressed against mine. And as much as I wanted to lose myself in her completely, I forced myself to slow down, to hold her instead of rushing forward. Because this wasn't just about desire. This was about trust. When I pulled back slightly, brushing her hair from her face, I whispered, I'm not going anywhere. Whatever this is, whoever that was, I'm here. Her lips trembled as she whispered back, don't make promises you can't keep. But the way she clung to me told me she needed me to keep it. The confession. The next morning, she was quieter. She moved around the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. Finally, she sat across from me, her coffee untouched. There's something you should know, she said softly. My chest tightened. Okay. She stared at her hands. That man you saw, he's someone I used to know. Someone who doesn't take no very well. Anger flared in me instantly. He's bothering you. Her silence was answer enough. Claire, you should have told me. Her eyes finally met mine, pained and vulnerable. I didn't want to scare you off. You deserve someone without complications. I reached across the table, taking her hand firmly. Claire, listen to me. I don't care how complicated it gets. I'm not running. For a long moment, she searched my face, as if waiting for the catch. But when she found none, her shoulders sagged, and she whispered, then don't let go of me. Because if he doesn't stop, I don't know what will happen. The turning point. That night, as I walked home, my mind was a storm. Who was this man? Ex-boyfriend? Something worse? One thing was clear, whatever history Claire carried, it wasn't finished with her. But neither was I. The more she tried to push me away, the more I knew I couldn't leave. Because behind her shadows, behind her fears, there was something worth fighting for. And as much as she warned me, I knew I was already too deep to turn back. The days after Claire's confession felt different. Our connection was stronger, but the shadows around her loomed larger. Every time her phone buzzed, I saw her tense. Every time we walked together, she glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting that man to appear again. And he did. The confrontation. It was a Thursday night when it happened. The cafe had just closed, and I insisted on walking her home. She protested at first, claiming she could handle herself, but I wasn't in the mood to argue. We were halfway down her street when I spotted him. Standing under a lamp post, arms crossed, waiting. Claire froze. Her grip on my arm tightened, nails digging into my sleeve. "Go inside," I whispered. "No," she said firmly. "This is my fight." The man stepped forward, his face coming into the light. He was older than me, maybe late 20s, with sharp features and a stare that felt like ice. "Claire," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "You've been ignoring me." "I told you, Marcus," she snapped, her voice trembling but strong. "It's over." Marcus's eyes flicked to me, sizing me up. A smirk tugged at his lips. "And this is why?" "This boy." Rage burned in my chest. "Back off," I said. He chuckled darkly. "You think you can protect her? You don't even know her, not really." Claire stepped in front of me, her body tense. "Marcus, leave. I don't want you in my life anymore." For a moment, the air was thick with silence. Then Marcus's smirk faded, replaced by something darker. "You'll regret this." And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The aftermath. Claire collapsed onto the nearest step, burying her face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I crouched beside her. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because I dragged you into this." "Because he doesn't let go, Ethan. He never has." I gently pulled her hands away, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Claire, listen to me. Whatever happened with him, it's not your fault. And you're not alone anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide them. She let them fall, let herself break, and I held her through it. The night together. That night at her apartment was different. There was no teasing, no games. Just raw honesty. She told me about Marcus, how they dated when she was younger, how he had been charming at first but turned controlling, manipulative. How it took everything in her to finally leave. "But he doesn't stop," she whispered. "He always finds a way back." I brushed her hair from her face. "Then we'll stop him." Her lips trembled, and then she kissed me, not out of desperation this time, but out of need for closeness, for comfort. The kiss deepened, slow and burning, and soon we were tangled in each other, not just bodies but everything we'd been holding back. Her touch was softer than before, lingering, memorizing. And for the first time, I felt like she wasn't trying to escape her pain through me, she was letting me in. When we finally lay together, the candlelight flickering across her skin, she whispered, "You make me feel safe." And I realized there was no higher truth I could give her than that. The turning point. The next few days, Claire changed. She laughed more easily, walked taller, as if a weight had been lifted. But I knew Marcus's shadow still lingered. One evening, as we sat on her balcony, she leaned against me and said, "You know, I never thought I could feel this way again." "What way?" "Like someone actually sees me. Not who they want me to be." Just me. I kissed the top of her head. That's all I've ever wanted. She smiled softly. Then don't let go. The final encounter. Of course, Marcus didn't vanish quietly. A week later, I left the cafe late, only to find him waiting outside. Alone. You think you've won, he said, stepping closer. I don't want to fight you, I said, my fists clenched anyway. He sneered. You're nothing. She'll realize it. She always does. Anger surged through me, but before I could respond, Claire appeared at the door. Marcus, she said firmly, her voice steady. This ends now. He turned, his expression darkening. Claire. No, she stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You don't own me. You never did. Whatever hold you thought you had, it's gone. I'm done letting you scare me. Her words cut through the night like a blade. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but the fire in her eyes stopped him. For the first time, he looked small. And then, without another word, he walked away. This time, I knew it was for good. The resolution. After he left, Claire's body shook with adrenaline. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. You were incredible, I whispered. Her laugh was shaky. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, I said softly. It's standing up anyway. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes glistening. You really aren't going anywhere, are you? Not a chance. And then she kissed me, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that wasn't just about passion but about promises. Epilogue. Weeks passed. Marcus never showed up again. Slowly, the tension faded, replaced by something steadier, something real. Claire still had her sharp wit, her teasing smirks, her playful edge. But now, she also let me see the softer parts of her, the fears, the dreams, the late-night poetry she used to hide. One evening, as we sat in the cafe after closing, she leaned across the counter and said, You know, you ruined me. I raised a brow. Ruined you? For anyone else, she said with a grin. Because after this, after you, how could I ever settle for less? I smiled, pulling her into my arms. Good. Because I'm not planning on giving you the chance. And as she kissed me under the warm glow of the cafe lights, I realized something. This wasn't just a dangerous proposition anymore. This was the beginning of everything.